So I want you to picture the scenario for a second. You're the founder of like a Series A software startup, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
You've built this incredible product. Your team of, say, 45 employees is just firing on all cylinders. And you have finally landed at the finish line of a multi-million-dollar negotiation with a massive Fortune 500 company.
Oh, the dream scenario.
Yeah.
The champagne is basically chilling in the fridge at this point.
Exactly. But then right at the end, the enterprise procurement team sends over the standard security questionnaire, just a PDF.
Right, always a PDF.
Yeah, and your CTO takes it, assumes, they can just knock it out over the weekend. But 2 full weeks later, they are still just drowning in it.
Oh, man.
The answers are incomplete, the enterprise buyer starts losing confidence, and the entire deal just completely stalls out.
It is honestly the ultimate modern business tragedy. I mean, you're not losing a deal because your product isn't good enough, but simply because you couldn't translate your engineering into, the language of enterprise risk.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the deep dive, everyone, because that high-stakes world of enterprise SaaS sales is exactly what we are jumping into today.
Yeah, it's a huge topic.
It really is. We're looking at a freshly updated, roughly 300-word analysis from May 2020 sales. It's titled The Strategic Guide to Virtual CISO, or vCISO, by FRIDRICK Cybertech.
And it's a brilliant piece of analysis, honestly.
Yeah, the mission for this deep dive is to really uncover how smart startup founders are completely hacking this enterprise security game. We're going to explore how they take what used to be a massive, dreaded IT cost center and literally turn it into a secret weapon to close huge deals.
Right, because we're looking at a text that completely reframes cybersecurity. I mean, for a long time, it was just viewed as a defensive chore, like a box to check in the basement of the IT department.
Yeah, just something you have to do to keep the lights on.
Exactly. But what this source material reveals is that in 2026, security is a core commercial lever. It literally dictates your revenue velocity.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that opening anecdote from the text about the CTO stalling the deal for 7 months, it really grabbed me. But I do have to push back a little on the premise here.
Sure, go ahead.
Because if you have a brilliant CTO, right, like someone who literally built a product robust enough to attract a Fortune 500 company in the first place, it just seems wild that they couldn't just, figure out a questionnaire.
It sounds counterintuitive, I know.
Right. It feels like having a Michelin star chef fail a health inspection just because they didn't know how to properly fill out the auditor's clipboard. Like, it's just paperwork, isn't it?
Well, that Michelin star chef analogy actually perfectly illustrates the problem here. Cooking a world-class meal requires a completely different skill set than proving to a municipal auditor that your refrigeration supply chain maintains a constant temperature of exactly 38 degrees.
Oh, okay. So it's not about the cooking, it's about proving the environment.
Exactly. It is a strategic altitude mismatch.
Mm.
The CTO's failure in this story isn't about a lack of technical skill at all.
Right, because they obviously know how to code.
Yeah. But enterprise buyers in 2026, they don't just want a one-time penetration test or like a basic password policy anymore. They're looking for a comprehensive security program.
A whole program, not just a checklist.
Right. They want to see documented controls, evidence of continuous review cycles, and most importantly, board-level ownership of risk. A CTO is fundamentally built to ship features and drive product.
Yeah, their goal is to make the thing work and make it fast.
Exactly. But an auditor wants to see a machine that governs risk. They just speak entirely different languages.
That structural mismatch makes a lot of sense, especially when you start looking at the raw numbers in the guide. Because this isn't just one unlucky CTO who got stuck.
No, not at all.
It's the result of a massive systemic labor and regulatory shift that's just hitting startups like a tidal wave right now.
A literal tidal wave.
I mean, globally, there is a talent shortage of 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity roles. 3.5 million.
That's a staggering number.
And the text specifically highlights India, which is wild. There's a shortage of nearly 1 million cybersecurity professionals there, but only about 80,000 qualified experts actually available in the market.
Right, so the supply and demand curve is just completely broken.
Yeah. So what does this all mean? If I'm a startup founder, am I just structurally priced out of selling to enterprise clients at this point?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you're hitting on exactly why this is such a crisis. When supply is that constrained, prices naturally skyrocket.
Of course.
If you want to hire a full-time, experienced chief information security officer, a true CISO, They demand a total compensation of anywhere from $180,000 to well over $400,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and in the Indian market, that translates to like 40 lakhs to over 1 crore annually.
Which is an insane budget item for a Series A company.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if a startup somehow manages to secure that kind of funding, a senior CISO typically will not join a company with fewer than 500 employees anyway.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Because they want the resources, the team, and the budget of a large enterprise. They don't want this scrappy, build it from scratch environment of a 45-person startup.
Okay, so startups are essentially priced out and sized out of the talent pool. But at the exact same time, regulators globally are just turning the heat all the way up.
Oh, absolutely boiling.
You've got the DPDP Act in India in full enforcement mode now. You've got CERT in reporting requirements, GDPR in Europe, HIPAA in the US.
It's a massive compliance web.
Right. And these aren't just government mandates anymore, are they? They're filtering mechanisms that large corporations use to decide who they will even consider doing business with.
Yeah, compliance frameworks like SOC2 and ISO 27001 are no longer optional audit checkboxes you can, just get around to later. They are absolute table stakes for sales.
You can't even get in the room without them.
The guide makes it explicitly clear. Every single quarter, a startup delays building a real security program means more deals put at risk and way higher costs to fix things later.
So the consequences of delay are entirely commercial. If you can't pass the procurement team's security review, your brilliant product will literally never see the light of day in that enterprise.
That's the harsh reality of 2026.
So I'm looking at this environment where a startup founder is locked out of enterprise revenue without security leadership, but they are completely priced out of hiring a full-time CISO.
It's an impossible tension.
Yeah, and that tension is exactly what created this massive $1.4 billion market for the Virtual CISO, or vCISO. It's a fractional fix for a structural gap.
Let's look at the ruthless, honest comparison matrix the source lays out here, because the math is undeniable.
Let's hear it.
A full-time CISO takes 6 to 9 months just to hire and costs up to $400,000. But a vCISO can be deployed in 2 to 4 weeks.
2 to 4 weeks. That is a massive difference when you have a deal stalling.
Exactly. And the annual cost is between $24,000 and $150,000, or about 8 lakhs to 40 lakhs. You're basically getting the depth of an entire security team for a fraction of the cost of a single executive hire.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because it's like renting a top-tier legal defense team for the exact trial you are facing right now, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, rather than putting a $400,000 a year partner on your permanent payroll just to sit around and read your basic everyday vendor contracts, you bring in the heavy hitters exactly when you need them.
The guide actually has a quote that I think should be on the whiteboard of every single growth stage startup. It says the decision isn't, can we afford a vCISO? It's, can we afford what we lose without one?
Ooh, yeah, that hits hard.
Because what a vCISO actually does in 2026 operates across 3 very distinct dimensions. First, there's the strategic dimension. This is, building the risk register, the policy framework, and the audit calendar.
It's foundational stuff.
Right. Then there's the commercial dimension, which is arguably the most critical for a growing business.
Yeah, the commercial piece seems to be where the rubber meets the road. I mean, it's actually responding to those massive enterprise security questionnaires, getting on the procurement calls, and sitting in on investor due diligence meetings.
Exactly.
It's having someone who can speak that specific language of enterprise risk we talked about earlier, so the founders can just focus on growing the company.
And the third dimension is operational. That means liaising with DevOps, coordinating auditors, and making sure what is actually written in the policy is happening in the code.
Because you can't just have a policy that nobody follows.
Right, and this operational layer is so vital because the text highlights a genuinely chilling statistic. Only 28% of small firms have a full-time cyber expert on staff.
Wow, only 28%.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the average life cycle of a data breach, meaning the time it takes to identify an intruder and contain them, sits at 241 days.
Wait, 241 days? That's like 8 full months.
Almost exactly 8 months. Just lurking there.
Imagine someone silently wandering around your company's digital infrastructure, reading your emails, looking at your source code, and monitoring your customer data for 8 full months before anyone even notices they picked the lock. That is a staggering liability.
It really is. The vCISO is there to dramatically shorten that detection window and limit the board's exposure while, simultaneously driving revenue forward by unblocking those procurement channels.
Okay, so I'm looking at this 90-day sprint timeline that FRIDRICK lays out in their Decision Defense Advisory framework.
Yeah, the DDA.
And frankly, 90 days seems incredibly fast to build an enterprise-grade defense from scratch. I mean, are they actually building genuine security, or is this just generating enough paperwork to trick a procurement officer into signing a contract?
It's a fair skepticism, honestly. But what's fascinating here is that the framework is specifically designed to avoid exactly that kind of security theater.
Okay, how so?
Well, the 90-day sprint is broken into three 30-day phases. Days 1 through 30 are entirely focused on assessment and alignment. They're looking for commercial blockers, not running useless 200-point technical gap analyses that just overwhelm the engineering team.
Oh, I see. So they review the enterprise pipeline to see exactly which deals are stuck and why. They stop the bleeding first.
Precisely. You fix the things that are actively costing you money.
That makes total business sense. You align the security effort directly with the revenue pipeline. And then days 31 to 60 are the program build, right?
Yeah, this is where the heavy lifting happens, drafting the actual policies, implementing acceptable use and incident response plans, and conducting the first real vendor risk reviews.
And then the final phase.
Days 61 to 90 are about evidence and credibility. This is where the mechanisms of modern security really come into play. They configure compliance automation platforms,
Right.
tools like Vanta, Drata, or Sprinto, to start collecting the actual evidence needed to get SOC2 ready.
I am so glad you brought up those automation tools because the shift there is fascinating to me. It's a game changer.
It used to be that preparing for SOC2 audit meant like an engineer manually taking hundreds of screenshots of AWS configurations just to prove that servers were encrypted, and then dumping them all into a giant zip file for an auditor. It was a total nightmare of manual labor.
Oh, the screenshot days.
Yeah.
Yeah, a complete waste of engineering talent. But these new tools integrate directly into your cloud infrastructure via APIs. They continuously monitor your systems.
So it's all real time now.
Right. If an engineer accidentally spins up a database without encryption, a platform like Drata or Sprinto flags it immediately, rather than waiting for some annual audit to catch the mistake 6 months later.
That's incredible. So the vCISO's job in that final 30 days is basically to get these automated pipelines running so the evidence collection is continuous and verifiable.
Exactly. And the source actually provides some very compelling real-world success stories to back this 90-day timeline up.
Oh yeah, the fintech startup story stood out to me. Yeah, the pre-series, a fintech startup. An investor's diligence firm found 8 critical security gaps, and the deal was essentially frozen.
Panic mode for the founders, I'm sure.
Complete panic. But in just a 60-day sprint with a vCISO, they closed the policy gaps, implemented multi-factor authentication across the board, and got their compliance tracking running.
And the investor actually signed off.
They did. The round closed, and the total cost of the vCISO was less than 0.5% of the total round they raised.
That is just an incredible return on investment. And there's also the DevTools startup they mentioned that brought a vCISO in at the seed stage.
Right, very early on.
They didn't even have immediate compliance pressure, but they knew they wanted to sell to enterprises eventually. So by building their security early, it became a competitive differentiator when they went to raise their Series A.
It proves FRIDRICK's core operating principle here, which is clarity over comprehensiveness.
Meaning, they aren't trying to build the Pentagon in 90 days.
Exactly. They are ruthlessly prioritizing the controls that actually matter to unblock the deal and secure the business objectives.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah. Their benchmark is that a founder should be able to clearly articulate their security posture in just 3 minutes at a board meeting. It forces absolute alignment between the security investment and the business reality.
Because if it doesn't serve the business, it just doesn't get prioritized in the sprint.
Exactly.
But that ruthless prioritization is only helpful if you understand what the buyer is actually afraid of, right? And right now, what enterprise buyers are terrified of is changing incredibly fast, specifically with this sudden, just overwhelming obsession with AI.
Oh, the AI shift is massive.
The guide details how this is entirely shifting the vCISO role in 2026.
The landscape is literally shifting beneath our feet. Buyers are no longer just asking about passwords and firewalls. If you are building AI features into your SaaS product, enterprise procurement teams are demanding to see robust AI governance.
And the specific things they are looking for are so fascinating. Like, they want to know how your training data is governed. They want to see controls in place to prevent prompt injections.
Yes, prompt injections are a huge vulnerability right now.
For anyone not deep in the AI weeds, a prompt injection is basically a scenario where someone types a clever, malicious sentence into your customer-facing chatbot, and suddenly it tricks the AI into spitting out your other client's sensitive financial data.
It's a massive legal liability, a
So
complete nightmare.
they're also looking at how you manage model drift, aren't they?
Yeah, model drift is critical because AI models can behave differently over time as they ingest new data, which sometimes leads to inaccurate or even biased outputs.
Right, but the AI basically starts degrading or changing its behavior.
Exactly. And an enterprise buyer wants to know that you have monitoring in place to catch that drift before it impacts their operations. And they want to see all of this aligned with the NIST AI risk management framework, the NIST AI RMF.
So a vCISO who understands traditional security but, can't navigate that AI governance landscape is going to leave a startup incredibly vulnerable during a procurement review today.
Oh, totally exposed.
Which naturally brings us to the red flags, the guide outlines for hiring a vCISO. Because the market surged so quickly, adoption grew from 21% in 2024 to 67% in 2025. There are a lot of legacy IT consultants out there just rebranding themselves as vCISOs.
Yeah, without actually understanding the modern SaaS context, and the guide pulls no punches on these red flags.
Good. What should founders look out for?
They warn founders to beware of consultants who start the engagement with a technical vulnerability scan instead of actually sitting down to understand your business model.
Oh, putting the cart before the horse.
Exactly. Or consultants who present to the board speaking in CVE scores, rattling off highly technical software bug metrics instead of translating those bugs into commercial risk.
My favorite red flag they call out is the consultant who tries to sell a massive complex SIEM tool on day one to like a 20-person company.
Oh, that is the worst.
For context, a SIEM tool is essentially a massive, incredibly complex burglar alarm system built to monitor the networks of giant corporations. Trying to sell that to a startup is like hiring a consultant to help you build a simple garden shed, and their first recommendation is pouring a $2 million reinforced concrete foundation.
That's a perfect analogy. It's a massive scale mismatch.
Yeah, just completely absurd.
This raises an important question, right? It's a classic misalignment of incentives. They're selling you massive complexity instead of cure, simply because of their own vendor relationships, or just their failure to understand your actual scale.
They want the big commission.
Exactly. And this points to how significantly the operational landscape has changed. A modern vCISO cannot just be a manual form filler clinging to old methods.
They have to be modern.
Right. They must be a strategist who knows how to leverage the automation tools we discussed, Sprinto, Drata, Vanta, to accelerate the process and actually lower the cost.
It really emphasizes that you aren't just hiring technical knowledge, you're hiring strategic efficiency. If they aren't using automation to lower your costs, they are literally wasting your money.
Absolutely.
So, to bring this all together for you listening, we are looking at a massive paradigm shift here. Cybersecurity is no longer that back-end IT headache that you can just, hide in the basement and hope nobody asks about.
The basement days are over.
They really are. In 2026, it is a frontline, executive-level commercial capability. It directly dictates your deal velocity, your ability to raise capital, and ultimately your company's valuation.
And if there is one final thought to take away from the FRIDRICK analysis, it's that early investment is the ultimate leverage.
Proactive instead of reactive.
Exactly. Just like that seed-stage DevTools startup, engaging a vCISO early, when technical debt is low and the architecture is still flexible, it yields the highest possible return.
Because it's easier to build it right the first time.
Exactly. Yeah. You avoid the crushing pressure and the exorbitant cost of having to tear down and rebuild your infrastructure while a multi-million-dollar contract just hangs in the balance. Building it right from day one is always cheaper than retrofitting it under a 90-day deadline.
It's all about playing offense instead of defense. And that actually leaves me with a final, slightly provocative thought based on everything we've explored today.
Well, let's hear it.
If enterprise buyers are increasingly using security posture as the ultimate filter to weed out vendors, if a pristine SOC2 report is now just as important as a flawless user interface, are we approaching a future where startups will literally open source their entire security playbook as their primary marketing campaign?
Oh, wow. That is interesting.
Right. Will radical security transparency replace the classic slick sales pitch?
Right.
Because if your security is a weapon, why not show it off on the front page of your website for every procurement officer to see before they even ask?
When trust becomes your primary product, transparency becomes your best marketing strategy. It's a very compelling vision of where the market is heading.
Something for you to mull over. Next time you're stuck looking at a sprawling vendor questionnaire, remember the Michelin star chef with the clipboard? You don't have to fail the inspection. You just need the right translator to help you build a machine that works. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.